Very good, very good. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
How's life up in Vermont?
I'm actually I'm in the office, believe it or not. The team is starting to come back into the office. It's been a fight to get folks to brave the wild and come into the office. But today we've had the most people ever. It's exciting.
I love it. So Joe, I missed the Spartan champion chat. So for those of you who don't know, right when the pandemic started, Joe started I think they called it the Spartan call, the warrior call, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't think I ever watched the news after Joe would literally go around the world and we'd get updates from doctors and other folks from his Spartan staff, but it was just absolutely unbelievable. And I think you kept that going for like what, 100 days or something.
We did 100 days straight. And the warrior call, I think it was 5:27 every morning, 5:27 a.m. And we had like 150 people on it.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I missed it. It was unbelievable. It was a great way to wake up every day.
Well, how can I help you guys? What value can I provide?
So we are, this is the Talent Champions Council. So it's a membership community that I started that we bring in best practices from corporate America, from pro sports, and from the military to raise everybody's game when it comes to talent strategy. So we've been bringing on really interesting people from all those different disciplines. We just had Mike Sorelli, a Navy SEAL, come on, and he spoke about his new book, The Talent War. And I think, Joe, what's fascinating, let me just introduce, for those of you who don't know, Joe Sena is a legend in the endurance and adventure racing world. He started Spartan over a decade ago. They bought Tough Mudder. He's an author of multiple books, 2 of which were New York Times bestsellers. He's a Cornell grad. If you don't follow Joe, you're crazy. It's the best content. My wife and I literally watch your Instagram like it's a Netflix. We binge on it like it's TV. It's so much fun. And this summer, my wife and I had the pleasure of climbing Mount Sparta in Joe's backyard as many times as you possibly could. So it only happened to be 90 something degrees that day. So I think Joe controls that temperature somehow, some way. But I thought today, so the way that we do these is it's very interactive. So we're going to get everybody involved in terms of asking you questions about just how you're running your business. One thing that I think is absolutely fascinating, and I saw this firsthand during those calls, is here you are running a large international organization that produces events. Like, that's what you do, and your world just literally stops. Yet you still manage through that. I never once in those morning calls, in the darkest of times, saw 1 ounce of panic. It was just an amazing example of how to lead through adversity. And so I'd love for you to talk about how did what was that like, and what is it like to lead an organization like Spartan, which puts on events that can't actually run their business?
Yeah, I'm not good at a lot of things, but as I listen to you, and hello everybody. And sorry I was late. I guess one thing I'm pretty good at is I don't know, I'm inspired when things go wrong. I like to run into trouble, if that makes sense. And so when I feel complacent, when things are going well, like pre-pandemic, we were lucky enough to acquire our competitor, and things were going good. But that's boring. That's boring for me. So as much as the pandemic sucks, and it shut down 325 events in 45 countries, and I had to furlough a bunch of people, I don't know, it's like getting in a cold shower, right? It woke me up. You have to get rid of that complacency. You got to get to work. And so So I don't know. I seek that. We had a hurricane hit our farm in Vermont, Hurricane Irene, and it shut us down. We couldn't get people in or out. We were in the middle of putting on a wedding on the farm. 150 people were stuck on the farm. 50 bridges were knocked out. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. We were able to get the backhoe and the excavator and the bulldozer going and work for 9 days straight. The National Guard came in. We worked with them. Like, it was awesome. And here it is, this great story you get to talk about. So I don't know. I like it. I like trouble.
Right. It's the resiliency that you built, and I think what you're doing for kids, your camp stuff it's the promos for the camp it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's absolutely hysterical. But it's genuine. That's really what you believe. It's what I believe in terms of building resiliency, which we're all going to need. We never know when that bus is going to come and hit us, but what we do know is there's always a bus around the corner, and we're going to get smacked, and it's just a matter of how quickly we bounce back. So I guess another question for you, because we do focus a lot on talent, is when you're evaluating employees for Spartan, and obviously Spartan is a unique place, but I don't know when you were running your Wall Street firm whether you had the same criteria. For me, my Mount Rushmore of what I look for in people is work ethic, discipline, resiliency, and passion. What are the things that you look for, Joe, whether it was, the pool business that you were running, whether it was your Wall Street firm, or whether it's Spartan?
Yeah, I think back as you're talking to my preteens, I had the swimming pool service business. I hired people, and then I was on Wall Street. I hired people. And even now, when I think back about the successes or the mistakes I've made in hiring, it's exactly the attributes you talk about, but I don't know, it's that person that's agile, flexible. They're not rigid, open to new ideas. They're not going to tell you this is the way we've always done it. They're not going to say it can't be done. They never get flustered. They're always giving energy and not taking it. Like, I don't care so much about domain expertise. I feel like you could teach most people anything. That's how the person became an expert to begin with. They learned it, right? But it's hard to teach like energy and passion and excitement and wake up early and stay late and get the job done and diligence. And so as long as you check all those boxes, I'm happy. Now, the challenge I found, because we got up to about 505 people without Tough Mudder, so call it 1,000 people pre-pandemic. It's hard to get to make sure every single one of them have all those attributes. And so you try to put some automation in place. We use a company called Predictive Index.
Yeah.
Very quick.
Well.
Yeah, very, very quick personality test. The other thing is I was always, I'm mad at myself because over the years, I should have had more psychologists and coaches around, because now when I'm having an issue where an employee doesn't check every one of the boxes, I just literally connect them with the coach and say to the coach, fix this. Fix this. I want this person to come forward with solutions from now on, not problems. I don't ever want to hear like a stroke of ego in there, and it's working.
Phenomenal. Tell us what's going on right now with Spartan. I know that races are on. What's the future look like, and what are the challenges that you're facing now? Still going through a pandemic.
Well, here's the crazy thing: is my two boys. We have 4 children. My 2 boys wrestle, and we could have tapped out like most people did in sports, children's sports. But I'm a maniac, and so I chased any wrestling tournaments anywhere in the country. And crazy enough, since March, since we got shut down a year ago, we've probably been to no less than a dozen major tournaments with 3,000 or 4,000 kids at them indoors in the US. So there have been pockets where these events have been taking place. And the challenge though with Spartan is we had so many events that we couldn't be agile enough to just say, oh, California said no, so let's move it to Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach said no, let's move it to Arizona. We just can't move that. There's too many events.
Right.
So we just had to shut everything down. I thought we'd be back up by January. We just had 3 events, one in Spain, one in Tokyo, one in Jacksonville, Florida, 2 weeks ago. We got one coming up in Texas. And it's looking like, in all the conversations we're having around the world, it's looking like by June 1, we're going to be about 75, 80% open for business.
Phenomenal. You talked about wrestling, and wrestling is near and dear to my heart. So my oldest son was on the national team and became a Marine. I didn't know a lot about wrestling, but boy, when I was in, Cedar Rapids, Iowa with him, or I was at Super 32 or this or that, it was a world that I wasn't exposed to. But the attributes of a wrestler to me, like if I could hire nothing but people with a wrestling background, I would, because I think it's, as a former football player, football is nothing compared to wrestling. Nothing.
My boys were up. I make all the kids, the whole family's got to wake up early, pre 6 a.m. and work out. But the boys were up this morning around 5 a.m. They ran 5 miles. They got their second practice at 2 p.m. They got some homework. They got their third practice. We go 7 days a week, because to play at that level in that sport, as you know, it's 2 or 3 practices a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. So for those of you who haven't had the privilege of being on Joe's farm, halfway up his mountain, in the middle of nowhere, there's all these pulleys with, gigantic logs attached to them, and you could just see this is like Joe's laboratory, and God knows what goes on there. But we were just climbing past it and thinking of. I made one of
the boys. Actually, I made the team. I don't know if you know this or not. During the summer, when you were there, they had to park themselves up there and climb that rope in those trees 300 times. That was like 9 hours of rope climbing straight.
Amazing. We've got a bunch of your friends actually on this call. So Robert Hamilton Owens, who's a great friend of mine. I know a great friend of yours is on. I think Charlie Engel is on, Laura Gassner-Otting, a whole bunch of folks. So, I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity. A lot of people, they've seen you on Joe Rogan or they follow you. And I think people are just fascinated with what you've been able to accomplish and what you've built. I will give a plug. Joe's written a lot of books. If you want to pick them up, you will not be disappointed. Spartan Up happens to be my favorite. And Joe also was kind enough. He wrote in my first book, Standing O, he wrote an incredible chapter about his mom, Jean, and all the proceeds for that go to charity. So pick those up. But I want to open it up really to our membership to ask questions directly to Joe. So put it in the chat. I know our first question is actually coming from Spain, from an Olympic gold medalist, my good friend Joe Jacoby. So Joe, I am going to kick it over to you, and you can ask Joe your question.
Thank you, Scott. Hey, Joe, I really enjoy your story. Actually, your comment about the employees and the way that some of the things you think about when you hire is a segue into the question. I heard your podcast interview a few weeks ago with Rich Roll, which was just outstanding. And then a few weeks later, Rich Roll had Adam Grant on his podcast, and he's got the new book out, Think Again, which is kind of a lot about our mental agility and how we rethink what we know. And one of the things that came up, that's been coming up in a lot of Adam's conversations that I'm really curious to ask you about, is that when I think of resilience and mental toughness, honestly, like, you are one of the first people that come to mind for me. And then Adam really talks about how if we're not careful with mental toughness and resilience and grit, it really does affect our ability, whether it's to be more vulnerable or whether to be more, our ability to change our opinion. How do you sort of wrestle with that contrast between grit, resiliency, and then on the other side, rethinking agility and rethinking what you know? How do you wrestle with that just for yourself?
It's a great question. This weekend we were at a wrestling tournament for the kids, and there's a bunch of dads that show up. And the dads, especially in wrestling or powerlifting, which is the folks' background that I'm around with all the kids, right? And they're screaming, and there's a lot of testosterone. One of them in particular has so much grit and so much resilience that it's a negative, to your point. And when the referee makes a bad call, it's just, there's no flexibility, right? And this weekend, it really came into clarity for me. And I said to him, I've got friends that are multi-billionaires. And when I look at their personalities and their ability to be so successful, they're nice. Their handshake is soft. They're not looking to show off. They're like, they could take it or leave. They just want to be good people. In some cases, not all billionaires are that way. There's no correlation necessarily, but it's interesting that the universe has given some of these people I know all this monetary wealth. And so I try to see if there's correlations. There's something interesting that I'm not doing that these people are doing. And when I explained it to some of these tough, gritty exterior, like, they started to get it. And I called it, like, you want to be a tough monk, right? That's what I said. I said, you want to be a tough monk, right? You want to be tough. You don't want to be taken advantage of. You want to be gritty, but like, you also want to be really nice and flexible and agile and defer to people and make people feel good. And so I guess I was lucky, and believe me, I need a lot of help. I'm not exactly squishy with my wife, and I don't give enough hugs, and you can get a lot of negatives out of me. But like, my mom was really mindful, and she was a vegan, and she meditated. And my dad was more involved in the Italian organized stuff, like, so it was like, I got both sides to study. And I guess that's the message, right? You want to be a tough monk.
Who I think is the best example, Joe, is a mutual friend of ours, Jesse Itzler.
Yeah.
That guy's the grittiest guy, but the nicest human being you could.
Nice guy too. Imagine. That's right.
Phenomenal guy.
Because it's only one side of the coin.
Yeah. No, 100%. So I know we've got another question. Stacy Feiner. Stacy is a psychologist out of Cleveland. So Dr. Feiner, fire away.
Hey, I feel like I was picked on The Price is Right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to be concise because I'm sure lots of other people have questions. So, Joe, I'm so lit up. There are like 5 things that I really want to speak to you about and I love Joe Jacoby's question. What insight and nuance we got out of you. I love your nuance and the distinctions. Quick thing, I am a psychologist, so if you need one, I will I'm deployable. And I want to speak to that piece is in my work as I've evolved, I really feel like I've come into my own and I'm breaking the sound barrier, as I know Rich Cardona has done, and I'm proud of him. Psychology is misunderstood so badly in our country. It's in our culture. It's so demonized. And coaching, because since the beginning of COVID, I've been able to work with some professional athletes. What you're talking about, and just quickly, let me just make my point. Psychology has the power to in a healthy way, reshape for the future. It doesn't have to be about digging into the past in a I don't know, whatever people imagine, a painful way. What you're talking about is digging in. I don't like those 9 hours of climbing for your kids, but nonetheless, it does require pain in some ways, but is always for the purpose of growth. And that's what I think psychology should be doing to enhance and improve the nation.
We're 100% aligned. I had the wrong perception of it. For me, as a kid, seeing it, hearing about it, it was a sign of weakness. And then later being on Wall Street and seeing guys like Stevie Cohen and some very successful hedge fund managers use it to actually, like, for high performance, it became okay with me. And I'm glad, because I'm really able to use it as a tool for our team. Because at the end of the day, a business is made up of a bunch of people, and if they're not communicating well and they're not gelling, it can't be a high performing team.
So psychology is the monk of the grit, and you have both, and I'm so appreciative of you. But I think psychology is in that combination.
Nice.
Love it. All right, we are going to move on to my good friend, Robert Anderson. So Robert is in New York. He's a phenomenal dad. He's a great entrepreneur. He just wrote an incredible book. So we're going to move over to my good friend, Robert.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate it. How's my volume? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Joe, how do you choose an event? How do you choose the location? What goes into it, and what's your evaluation process?
We have a giant map on the wall of the entire globe. We close our eyes and we throw darts, and wherever they land. You know what? There's some truth to that. And the reason I say that is I remember in the early days, I had a friend in Slovakia. And so I said, hey, my friend could help us pull off an event in Slovakia. And everybody said, why the fuck would we go to Slovakia? And I said, because I have a friend there. Let's try it out. If we screw it up, no one's going to know, right? And so we went to Slovakia, and it turned out to work perfectly. And then I got a phone call from somebody who said, hey, we want you to put an event on in Montana. And everybody said to me, Montana, there's nobody in Montana. Why would we go to Montana? And I said, well, I've never been to Montana. I think it'd be cool if we put an event on, we can go to Montana, it'd be cool. And it worked. And so as crazy as this sounds, I mean, really, we got to make sure we can park cars. We got to make sure it's got this epic geography, right? So people can enjoy mountains or whatever it is. When my team came to me and said, let's put one at Fenway, I said, that's ridiculous. Why would we put a race at Fenway? They play baseball. Baseball is such a soft sport. It doesn't make any sense. I was wrong. They were right. Fenway worked. Everybody wanted to go to Fenway. So I wish I could tell you that we got a bunch of scientists in the background that are crunching numbers and figuring it out. But no, it's completely random.
I have a 400-acre park that I run in that I love. It has 2 man-made lakes. It's in the back
where is
of
it?
It's in New York. It's about an hour north of the city.
So near Harriman?
No, in Hopewell Junction, New York. It's right outside. Yeah, it's
send me an email, joe@spartan.com, and make sure we could park 3,000 cars there.
at the same time.
At the same time.
It's possible.
Okay.
It's possible.
There
I'll shoot you. I'll shoot you an email.
That's how simple it is, folks.
Yeah.
Be able to park 3,000 cars. Joe's coming to your town.
That's it.
joe@spartan.com. Is that what you said?
Spartan.com.
I'll shoot it over to you. If anything, it would be worth us headed up and going for a run, or maybe I can talk my way into getting up to Vermont.
You got to come to Vermont.
Yeah.
Vermont's off the charts. So we're going to go next to what I love about the Talent Champions Council is not only do we have members all over the world, but we have everybody from CEOs to pro athletes to Olympians to 20-somethings. And this next guy is a 20-something that, like, I'm pushing all my chips in on this guy. He is going to do some spectacular things. So Tyler, you are up with Mr. Sena.
Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you so much, Joe. I run a podcast called the 20% Podcast, and one of my favorite questions, it's a career development show to give people tips and tricks across all industries. My question to you, though, is if you were teaching a college 101 class based upon your previous experience, whether it was life, whether it was Spartan, what would you be teaching and why?
You know, we're going back to psychology. I took a Psych 101 class first semester in college, and that class, I refer to it in my mind or in discussion every single day of my life. There was one lesson in particular that we learned. Professor Dr. Maz said, I forget what the term was. Our previous psychologist could tell me what the term for this is, but basically, you know, the example he gave was you're in a restaurant, you see that the people sitting next to you did not leave a tip. Your immediate thought is that they must be cheap, and that's not right. But what you didn't see was before you sat down, you know, the waiter or waitress dropped soup on the patron's lap, they tripped over the chair, they knocked the guy's wig off. Like there was a lot of things that went down that caused them not to leave a tip. And so we jumped to conclusions in life without having a full set of facts. And when you understand that theory, that concept, it makes life so much better because you just don't lose your shit over stuff. You don't make assumptions over things. You kind of give everybody, you know, a second chance. So I would teach, if not the entire breadth of psychology, that one lesson.
Good stuff. We're
Awesome. Thank you.
moving on to my good friend Ron Rosansky. Ron is the CEO of a fantastic company in New York called Fidelis, and he is at this moment training for his first triathlon. So, Ron, take it away.
Scott, thanks for putting this together. Joe, thanks for the time. You mentioned before connecting team members to a coach. What type of coach, and how'd you pick them?
I wish I could tell you that, you know, again, I had a really rigid system for picking the best coaches, but I don't know. You can tell right away if you like people or you don't. So first they become my coach. I get to know them. And if I like them, then I hand them off to somebody in the organization. And if I get a second set of results that are positive, and then they just become integrated in the organization. So right now we have two, and one is a little different than the other. So certain people are better with one than the other, and we're probably going to go to 3 or 4. I don't know if that answered the question well enough, but more importantly, I have a question for you. When are you going to come to the dark side? Triathlon is so soft.
Well, when I'm done with this Ironman in August, we're in.
Then you're coming over?
Yeah.
All right.
Ron, we're keeping you to that.
Absolutely. Please
all
do.
right, well,
Please do.
we will make sure. Joe, one of the things, like a common denominator through a lot of this is I think you're a guy, and one of the reasons why you've probably been so successful is you're just a guy who takes action. And it may not be, you know, something that you've sat down and thought about extensively, but you're doing the mental calculations quickly. And so do you attribute a part of your success to the fact that you're just going to move forward and you're not afraid to make mistakes?
I expect to make mistakes. I love making mistakes and learning from them. I don't have an issue with that. The thing I have an issue with is again, complacency, is lack of movement, not getting shit done. So I believe in a concept I coined, fire, ready, aim. A lot of people have issue with that. They don't understand. There's a lot of planning that goes on, a lot of organizing. Funny enough, going back to the triathlete or Ironman comment, certainly completing anything that's not on the couch is fantastic. But I was running around the world doing Ironmans for a while, and the name is so amazing, Ironman. I know the CEO well, I know the sport very well, I love them, but there's so much planning and organizing that goes into doing those events. They become so, for lack of a better word, sterile. Like I'm looking to save 4 ounces on my bike seat. I'm getting an $800 wetsuit. I'm doing all these things. And then it turns out true story, Lake Placid, pouring rain, terrible conditions, all these people drop out. They weren't prepared for that. And so I think what happens is when you do a ton of planning and you're so organized and so detailed around, like, the world throws a curveball at you. COVID shows up and you're not prepared for it. And so my policy is I'd rather just start going. I'd rather just start moving, and then I'll figure it out along the way. And if I got to go without a bike seat, or I got to go in the rain, or whatever I'm going to do, I'm gonna figure. There's a military saying, I think, that's used quite right. No plan survives boots on the ground, right? But so anyway, that's my philosophy, right or wrong.
Wait a
It's funny,
second. I need a bike.
and a seat. Joe doesn't even need a seat.
I need a bike and a
so
wetsuit.
You
No
don't
one
need
ever
a
told
seat,
me
though.
that.
He's
So-
one of us already. I can see it. You're definitely a Spartan.
He's in. It was interesting. My wife and I were talking this weekend about marathons, and she hasn't run a marathon in a while, but the marathons that she has run, she's done with no training, like zero training at all. And we've done Jesse's 29:029 many, many times, and we've never trained for it like I see other people train, and we've gotten the job done. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. So we've got a question from my good buddy Chris. Chris does so many things I wouldn't even know where to start. I am obsessed with his life bowls called Zoe Life, which are phenomenal. So Chris, I'm always interested to see what you're going to ask.
So going back to your history, Joe, and thanks for joining us, and Scott and Kathy, thanks for organizing. How do you go from selling fireworks, t-shirts, and building a pool cleaning company to a career on Wall Street?
Look, reflecting back, obviously, if I was back on the starting line, it wouldn't make any sense. But reflecting back, I think the one attribute we should all have, all right, no matter what we do in life, whether we're a monk, a Marine, a mom, we have to have that ability to communicate and that ability to sell. And I had that gift. So selling fireworks in a neighborhood where everybody was selling fireworks, you had to be the best salesperson, right? And so I was pedaling my bike around and literally selling packs of firecrackers, going around and knocking on doors and convincing people with swimming pools to let me clean their pool and not use the other company. I had to have the ability to sell. And although Wall Street scared me and it was on the other side of the river, and you had to have a special pedigree and a connection and all those things, I just needed the ability to sell and sell better than the other folks. And by the way, Spartan's no different. I got to think about what I'm selling now. I'm convincing you to get off the couch, go to bed early, wake up early, take cold showers, eat healthy, train like crazy, and crawl under barbed wire. That is a tough sale, right? If I was selling cotton candy and Netflix, it'd be a lot easier. So I guess I can sell. And so it doesn't matter where just wind me up and let me loose. That's what I do.
Love it. Our next question is from a dear friend of mine. He is a 17-year Marine, flew helicopters, and now is killing it with his company, Rich Cardona Media. So Rich, you're up with Joe. And he has a phenomenal podcast.
Joe will be on it at
absolutely
some point.
incredible.
I'll come up to Vermont. We'll do it. I'm already, Marion and I have been talking a lot, and then she told me some really good stories. So
Awesome.
Joe, so I have, the agency I have is very much focused on personal branding. Like the Spartan brand itself does not necessarily need all the content that you put out. It doesn't need the podcast per se. Like you would still probably be able to do as much as you've been doing. However, when you started getting into more digital and you started doing the podcast and the YouTube and the Instagram stories and all of it, what would you say to other executives in terms of how much that has helped cultivate the brand into like a bigger and maybe more massive phenomenon?
We have a really tough time measuring attribution, like what what is moving the needle and what isn't. And again, I wish I sounded more like an intellectual for you guys. I know you're looking for specific information, but my approach with the podcast, my approach with all the content we produce, probably, you know, if we do 75 things that are out there, you probably could get away with 20. I could probably kill 55 of them and it wouldn't make a difference. But I don't know. I mean, think about, this is the way I think about it. I see a product or service, I see somebody using it, I see it in an email, I don't necessarily buy it or engage with it right away. It might be 2 or 3 years later. So although I can't really tie every sale back, I do know it's very hard to convince a person to do something hard, like a Spartan or a Tough Mudder or whatever, a trail race. And so I just want to stay in front of them. And so it's just really like all my decisions, I go, what's the upside? What's the downside? How much is this podcast costing me in time and dollars? What's the upside? Even though I can't exactly measure the upside, I think I know what it is. Doesn't cost that much, we're doing it. And I do that with everything. And so, but again, if an outside, and this happens to me, if I have an investor, Hearst Corporation, whatever, they look at it, why are we doing all these things? Because I want to.
Thank you.
How much of the success, Joe, of Spartan is the community that you guys have built? Because, you know, Spartan races are not easy, but the community is so loyal to the brand. How much of your success is because of the community and the things that you've done to build that community?
It's all community, but it cuts both ways. Look, when COVID hit, I had almost $40 million of tickets already sold for last year. I could not refund $40 million. I couldn't do it because I spend most of that money to organize the event 8 months in advance, 9 months in advance, right? So the community, as awesome as it is, bands together, makes us who we are, protects each other. They also come together when they're pissed off. And so, you know, it cuts both ways. Thankfully, after some time, folks kind of got it. Like, you know, after thousands and thousands of messages and emails, like, guys, we can't refund $40 million. We won't be here if we do, and no one's giving us the money back. We spent it.
Right.
So, but we wouldn't be the size and scale we are without community. So it cuts both ways. Make sure you take care of that community best you can.
Yeah. Next question, Scott Garber.
Hey, Scott, I appreciate you putting this on. Joe, pleasure to be on with you.
Okay.
Subtle plug, man. I don't have a 400-acre farm like Robert to train on, but just moved up to Estes Park, so got Long's Peak out of my window. If you ever find yourself to say, would love to scale it with you. But in that vein, I'm really curious. You know, you have such mental fortitude and will to push through these races. Is there any one challenge or race that sticks out to you that pushed you to the limit? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Well, you know, we talked about this idea of fire, ready, aim before, and that's why I like putting my back against the wall, getting in this position where I have no choice. Because when you have a choice, people quit. A lot of people quit when they have an out, right? And so I like to put myself in a position where I don't have an out. And so some of the crazy races I was doing for a long time, there was no out. Like the Iditarod in Alaska, like it was 30 below. It was waist deep snow. I couldn't just get on a cell phone and say, pick me up. Like, so that's how I got through it. I wish I could tell you, like, I was so tough. I just grinded my teeth and ate snow. No, how the fuck was I going to get out of that? It was either die or finish. So, just because I don't want to be a fraud, I like to just put myself in those situations. Like the first time I ran 40 miles many, many years ago, I remember I said to my wife, just drop me off 40 miles from home with no money. I gotta get home. You know, so
I love that.
Yeah, like I wish I could say I was tougher than I am, but it's that simple. No plan B.
But since then, I think you're constantly putting yourself in positions. Like I remember, I think you were with Jesse, in New York City and you're carrying a kettlebell around Midtown Manhattan, which is hysterical.
Check this out. This is the new phone carrying case. Where I wanted to make it really hard on my face. Look, the phone is gonna fit right in there. And now if you want to make a phone call, you got to hold this 30-pound kettlebell up to your head, which is a nightmare. So yes, I put myself in stupid positions.
When did you start doing that, Joe?
They just brought it to me 10 minutes before I got on the phone with you. Somebody, oh, they're carrying the kettlebell.
Yeah.
Years ago.
And was there something like symbolic about it, or
There
is
was,
it just
there
like
was a guy I was trying to help him lose weight. He was 696 pounds. And I told him to come down and weight, I'll carry weight. The more weight you lose, the more weight I carry. And it got stupid. But then check this out. The hang on a second. The mayor of Sparta gave me this ancient kettlebell. Look at that.
God.
Isn't that awesome?
Is that real?
That's real. But they lost it on a flight. But I got it back. It's kind of a nightmare traveling with these things because
checking in a 40-pound kettlebell is
a nightmare.
Not something people normally do.
No.
We've got a couple more questions left. JJ, my good friend, who is a Air Force veteran, decorated. I know you've got a question for Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Hi, Joe. Quick question for you. Your opening comments, you mentioned some of the challenges you had with the ability to quickly move Spartan to different locations. I'm wondering if there's any lessons learned from the COVID pandemic, and certainly there'll be something else that comes along. Just curious on your thoughts on what might be able to learn from this event.
The biggest thing I learned was about 6 months before the pandemic, we had the ability to purchase cancellation insurance on events around the world, but we decided it was too expensive. Holy fuck, did I screw that up? That would have changed the entire game for us. So yeah, I guess I would do that differently going forward. And I don't know. I mean, how am I don't know what I could have never guessed that a pandemic would have shut us down for a year. So I don't know what's around the corner. I guess you should always have more cash than you need. Steve Jobs probably told his team over at Apple the same thing. That's why they sit on so much cash, right? You can't have enough cash. I wish I had more cash on the balance sheet. And I guess the other thing I learned from my dad, which clearly I didn't implement, was don't be so dependent on one product or one service or one revenue stream. I should have had a few other things built out, a digital a part of our business, for example, not just physical events. So, or more, we should have been stronger, I guess, in merchandise. But again, you don't know. I was on Wall Street for a little over a decade, and you could prepare all you want, and then you wake up the next day and the market's down big, or you're short and it's up big, or you lose your best client or whatever. So I guess you just want to be ready for obstacles.
Love it. Joe, do you have time for one more question?
One more, then I got to run into a meeting. I apologize.
You got it. Rachel, you're up.
Hi, thanks, Scott. Joe, so we did a team event at a Tough Mudder a couple years ago.
Nice.
We were supposed to do another one last year. It was canceled. So I know there's a little bit of a unique identity between Spartan fans and the Spartan community and the Tough Mudder community. Now that you own both, why would one choose Tough Mudder versus one choosing Spartan? So what do you think those identities between the two events are?
Well, funny enough, we didn't know it until right before we purchased the company, when we were able to look at both databases. But funny enough, there's only a 10 or 15% overlap of consumers throughout all the years. But I fought them as if that was 100% overlap. We fought every weekend, and it made me better, and it made them better. But when you look at the brands, and we're going to keep them exactly as they were, we're pretty hardcore. We're going to hold you accountable. You're not skipping obstacles. You're not supposed to. You got to do your 30 burpees. We're more interested in timing and ranking, etc. Whereas the Tough Mudder folks, still hard, still challenging, but you want to skip an obstacle, you skip an obstacle. You're not necessarily being timed, et cetera. So it tends to be very team oriented. That said, we got like 180,000 teams on the Spartan side. So they both have teams, but Tough Mudder has very large teams, especially corporate teams showing up.
Joe, I cannot thank you enough for carving out time. I know how crazy busy you are. And, you know, I know probably that you are an inspiration, but I have heard from so many people how inspiring you are. So thank you very much for joining us. And you delivered massive value. So I really, really appreciate it.
You guys are awesome. And good luck with the Ironman. I was just busting chops. I was trying to motivate you. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Take
Joe.
care.
Bye-bye.
All good. All good.
All right, cool. Bye.
I don't know what you're eating there, Mr. Rozansky. It better be healthy. I'm sure it is. So I appreciate everybody joining us. I think everybody got a flavor. If you didn't know Joe Sena, you got an idea of the legendary Mr. Sena now. Again, I would encourage you, consume whatever content you can, because I think Joe's a pretty rare guy. He's incredibly resilient. He's incredibly smart. He doesn't get enough credit and doesn't give himself enough credit for just how incredibly bright he is. But there's very few people like Joe out there. And that's what we're really trying to bring to you guys, is unique people that are doing great things. And hopefully we can just all take one idea and implement that into our lives or into our companies to make our companies stronger and to make ourselves better. So that's really what we're all about with the Talent Champions Council. I love that you guys are members. I appreciate you guys. We've got great stuff coming up. We've got one that I may announce as early as next week that will come as a huge surprise to everybody, but we're working on some really epic stuff, and we are just getting started, and we couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you for all your support, and keep doing great things. I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow. Champions Chat, 3 o'clock. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.